This is K.M. Weiland, and you are listening to the 231st episode of the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. I'm rattling along on my outline for my historical superhero work in progress, Wayfarer. I zipped through the general sketches in which I figured out the basic plot, and now I'm having fun with one of my favorite parts, character sketches. Casting and discovering characters is always the heart of my stories, so getting the chance to interview my characters using the in-depth 100-plus questions I've gathered over the years is always a blast. If you're interested in accessing the character interview I use, you can find it in my free ebook, Crafting Unforgettable Characters, which is available on my site at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. A lesson in eliminating unnecessary characters from your story. The latest post in the video series on my blog offers some tips and examples on how to figure out which characters are really unnecessary to your book. To watch it, visit my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. New videos are posted every Wednesday. And now, I hope you enjoy this week's podcast entitled Creating Stunning Character Arcs, Part 1. Can you structure character? What if there were a surefire secret to create stunning character arcs? Would you be interested in discovering it? If you care about connecting with readers, grabbing hold of their emotions, and creating stories that will resonate with them on a level deeper than mere entertainment, then the answer has to be a resounding yes. But here's the thing about character arcs. They're way too easy to take for granted. On the surface, character arcs seem to boil down to nothing more than a simple 3-step process. 1, the protagonist starts one way. 2, the protagonist learns some lessons throughout the story. And 3, the protagonist ends in a probably better place. That's character arc in a nutshell. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. What's to learn? Turns out, a lot. Too often, character and plot are viewed as separate entities to the point that we often pit them against each other trying to determine which is more important. But nothing could be farther from the truth. Plot and character are integral to one another. Remove either one from the equation, or even just try to approach them as if they were independent of one another, and you risk creating a story that may have awesome parts, but which will not be an awesome whole. We often think of plot as being about structure, but our notions of character and character arc tend to be more airy-fairy. Surely, character arc is something that must evolve organically from the characters themselves. Surely, we can't structure our character arcs without making them formulaic or robbing them of life and spontaneity. Surely, right? Wrong, actually. When we say plot and character are integral to one another, what we're really saying is that plot structure and character arc are integral to one another. If you're familiar with the basics of story structure, such as I talk about in my book, Structuring Your Novel, then you can probably already see some of this structuring of character arc in action. The major plot points all revolve around the characters' actions and reactions. As Michael Hauge says in Writing Screenplays That Sell, the 3 acts of the story correspond to the 3 stages of the hero's outer motivation. Each change in the hero's motivation signals the arrival of the next act. The character drives the plot, and the plot molds the character's arc. They cannot work independently. But it gets better. Not only does character arc directly influence story structure, it is also a direct influence on theme. In some respects, we might even go so far as to say that character arc equals theme. On even just a surface level, the discovery of the integrality of these 3 most important of all story elements is thrilling. None of them lives in a vacuum. They are all symbiotic. This makes the creation of all 3 both a little more complicated and at the same time a whole lot easier. It's more complicated for the obvious reason that we have 3 times as many story elements to keep track of at once. But it simplifies the overall process by rolling all 3 into a cohesive whole. Once we understand how plot, character, and theme all work together, chances are good that if we get one of them right, we'll get all 3 right. Although the variations of character arcs are as endless as the vagaries of human nature, we can narrow character arcs down to 3 basic types with a few primary variations upon each. To begin with, we have the change arc. This is the most popular and often the most resonant character arc. The protagonist will start out with varying levels of personal unfulfillment and denial. Over the course of the story, he will be forced to challenge his beliefs about himself and the world until he finally conquers his inner demons, and as a result probably his outer antagonists as well, and ends his arc having changed in a positive way. Then we have the flat arc. Many popular stories feature characters who are already essentially complete unto themselves. They're already heroes and don't require any noticeable personal growth to gain the inner strength to defeat the external antagonists. These characters experience little to no change over the course of the story, making their arcs static or flat. Sometimes these characters are the catalysts for change in the story world around them, so that we find more prominent growth arcs in the minor characters. And finally, we have the negative arc. Negative character arcs offer, arguably, more variations than either of the other arcs. However, at their most basic level, the negative arc is just a change arc, flipped on its head. Instead of a character who grows out of his faults into a better person, the negative arc presents a character who ends up in a worse state than that in which he began the story. Over the next month or so, we're going to be exploring the structure of character arcs. Since the basic change arc is both the most complicated of the 3 arcs and the most integral to understanding the other 2 arcs, we'll be spending most of the series discussing the intricacies of how to evolve your character in a positive way. How should we create our character arcs? Where do we find their foundation? How do the important moments in story structure affect and are affected by the important moments in character arc? In short, how does character arc work? And how can you crack the code and create a stunning character arc in every single story? Stay tuned to find out. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, you can visit my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And be sure to check back again next week.